Claire Bennett had spent her whole life fixing other people's mistakes, but she had never expected one careless joke to make the entire palace prepare for her wedding. She woke with her cheek pressed against a cutting table, a measuring ribbon tangled around one wrist, and silver wedding flowers moving past the workshop windows in armfuls. For one confused moment, Claire assumed she had slept through the final preparations for Lady Amelia Prescott's ceremony. Then Megan Turner rushed through the door, pale beneath the morning light. "Do not panic," Megan said. Claire sat up slowly. That sentence has never prevented panic. Beyond the workshop, servants carried white banners through the courtyard. Musicians tuned their instruments beneath the balcony. Two dressmakers entered holding an ivory gown made to Claire's exact measurements. Her name was stitched inside the collar. Claire stared at it. "Why is my name in that dress?" Neither woman answered. Royal guards appeared at the workshop entrance, their black uniforms marked with the golden wolf of Greyhaven. The commander bowed to Claire as though she were someone important. "The Alpha King is waiting." Claire looked down at herself. Her plain gray work dress was wrinkled, her long chestnut hair had fallen from its pins, and the faint crescent scar inside her left wrist showed beneath a rolled sleeve. She was an Omega seamstress who repaired royal gowns in rooms no noble ever visited. Kings did not wait for women like her. "There has been a mistake," she said. Megan gave a weak laugh. "Yes. Unfortunately, the king appears committed to it." Claire was escorted through corridors she usually entered only through service doors. Every worker she passed stopped and bowed. Some looked delighted. Others looked offended. By the time she reached the central balcony, her heart was beating so hard she could hear it above the bells. Alpha King Nathaniel Blackwell stood before the gathered court, tall enough to dominate the space without moving. His broad shoulders filled a black ceremonial coat, his face was sharp and coldly beautiful, and his supernatural golden eyes fixed on Claire the moment she stepped outside. He looked at her wrist scar as though it answered a question he had carried for years. Then he turned toward the palace below. "The bride has arrived," he announced. Claire stopped beside him. "Bride?" Nathaniel's expression remained perfectly calm. "The palace will be ready by moonrise." "Ready for what?" she asked, already afraid of the answer. His golden eyes returned to hers. "For our wedding." Hundreds of people cheered. Claire could only stare at the king and wonder how a joke spoken in an empty fitting room had become a royal command, why he seemed to recognize a scar she had never shown him, and what exactly would happen at moonrise if she refused to become his bride. The previous evening, Claire Bennett had been exactly where Greyhaven expected an Omega seamstress to be, behind the curtain, beneath the stairs, and 3 rooms away from anyone who would receive credit for her work. The Royal Costume Workshop occupied the lowest eastern wing of Blackwell Palace, where heat from the pressing irons clung to the stone walls and daylight reached the windows only after noon. Claire sat at the longest cutting table with a silver wedding veil spread beneath her hands. The lace had torn near the crown, the damage hidden beneath a row of pearl flowers until someone pulled too hard. "Can you fix it?" Megan Turner asked. Claire examined the broken threads. "Yes." The answer came before she considered the time. It was nearly 9 o'clock. She had been working since sunrise, and the narrow muscles between her shoulders had begun to ache. "How long?" 2 hours if no one interrupts me." The workshop door opened. Mrs. Abigail Reed entered with Lady Amelia Prescott's chief dresser and a young noble seamstress named Caroline Vale. Caroline's face was pale. Amelia's silver reception gown hung over her arms, one side of the bodice cut nearly 2 inches shorter than the other. "Miss Bennett," the chief dresser said, "there has been an error." Claire looked at Caroline. The younger woman stared at the floor. "Who cut the panel?" Mrs. Reed asked. Caroline's fingers tightened around the fabric. Claire marked it. Claire had not. She remembered marking every panel that morning. The front pieces bore 2 white chalk lines. The back pieces bore 1. Caroline had ignored the code and cut the silk while Claire was repairing the ceremonial cloak. Claire could prove it by showing the chalk still visible along the discarded pattern, but Caroline's father supplied half the workshop's imported fabric. Exposing her would create trouble Mrs. Reed could not afford. The chief dresser folded her arms. Lady Amelia will wear this gown tomorrow. If it is not repaired tonight, the entire workshop will answer for it. Claire felt every face turn toward her. She could say the truth. She could refuse responsibility. Instead, she saw Mrs. Reed's worry, Caroline's fear, and Megan's family debt hanging over another lost week of wages. Claire placed the veil aside. I can rebuild the panel. Caroline looked up with immediate relief. You admit the mistake? The chief dresser asked. Claire swallowed. I will correct it. It was not the same answer, but no one cared about the difference. Then you will remain until it is finished, the woman said. And the cost of the wasted silk will be deducted from your pay. Megan stepped forward. That is not fair. Megan, Claire warned softly. No, it is not. Claire did not cut that panel. Caroline's face tightened. Mrs. Reed looked toward the open door, worried someone might hear. Claire touched Megan's wrist. It is fine. The lie tasted familiar. The chief dresser left satisfied. Caroline placed the ruined gown on the table and whispered, "Thank you." She did not offer to stay. By the time Claire repaired the bodice, fixed the veil, corrected 3 mislabeled delivery books, and resewed the hidden pocket in Amelia's traveling cloak, midnight was less than an hour away. Each task had begun with someone saying her name in the tone people used when they wanted a problem to disappear. Claire never received praise when a garment was perfect. Perfect meant no one noticed the work. Mistakes were visible. Repair was supposed to be invisible. She had learned that lesson long before the palace. In the foster home where she grew up, affection arrived after chores. A warm smile followed a mended shirt. An extra piece of bread came after she calmed a younger child. When she was useful, adults called her a good girl. When she was tired, quiet, or unwilling, they called her difficult. By 16, Claire had stopped asking what she wanted. Wanting created trouble. Fixing trouble created safety. Her goal was modest enough to feel possible. She wanted to save $3,000, rent a narrow storefront near the South Market, and open a small dress shop with Megan. They would choose their own hours, place their own names on the labels, and pay every worker on time. Claire kept the savings ledger hidden inside an old pattern book. After the silk deduction, she would have to postpone the lease again. Megan dropped into the chair beside her. You know Caroline will do this again. Claire threaded a needle with silver silk. Probably. And you will fix it again. Probably. Why? Claire looked at the ruined veil beneath her hands. The damaged lace followed a pattern most people would call random. It was not. Every loop depended on the one beside it. Pull the wrong thread, and the tear widened. Find the original structure, and the repair could become stronger than the untouched section. Claire understood fabric because fabric told the truth. Because if I do not fix it, Mrs. Reed loses the royal account. You lose your wages. The apprentices lose their placements. And what do you lose? Megan asked. Claire smiled without humor. Sleep. Megan did not smile back. You always make yourself the cheapest thing in the room. The words landed harder than Claire expected. She bent over the veil so Megan would not see her face. Hand me the pearl thread. A shadow crossed the doorway. Lord Everett Crane entered without removing his gloves. He supervised royal ceremonies, marriage contracts, and every person unfortunate enough to stand between tradition and his schedule. His silver hair was perfectly arranged, his expression as smooth as polished stone. The rehearsal has been delayed, he announced. Mrs. Reed straightened. The garments are nearly ready, my lord. The garments are not the problem. Lady Amelia refuses to wear the ceremonial veil until the final fitting. His gaze moved across the room and stopped on Claire. You are close to her measurements. Claire looked up. Not exactly. Close enough for rehearsal. I am still repairing the veil. Then repair it while wearing the gown. Megan made a strangled sound. Everett ignored her. The Hall of Vows must be tested before dawn. The placement of the bride, king, witnesses, and ceremonial mirror cannot be altered tomorrow. Claire glanced at the clock. My lord, I have been working for almost 16 hours. Then you already know the ceremony better than anyone. I am not a noblewoman. Tonight, You are a dress form with feet. The apprentices lowered their eyes. Claire felt the insult move through the room, sharp and humiliating. Everett had not raised his voice. Men like him rarely needed to. You will stand in Lady Amelia's place, speak the rehearsal responses, and leave when the hall is approved. Claire wanted to say no. Her entire body wanted it. The answer rose into her throat and stopped behind the same old fears. If she refused, Mrs. Reed might lose the contract. Megan might lose work. Claire herself could be dismissed before earning enough for the shop. Yes, my lord, she said. Everett turned away as if the matter had never required discussion. Megan waited until he left. One day, that word is going to ruin your life. Claire lifted the repaired veil. Not tonight. The rehearsal dress was too long, the sleeves too tight, and decorated with enough silver embroidery to make Claire feel wrapped in expensive curtains. She walked through the service passage toward the Hall of Vows with Megan carrying the veil behind her. Along the way, Claire noticed 3 inconsistencies. The ceremonial delivery book listed 6 silver thread seals, but only 5 had reached the workshop. The label on the mirror covering had been restitched with a different needle gauge. A packet from Everett's office carried the same silver cord used only for restricted marriage documents. She remembered each detail automatically. Patterns stayed in her mind even when she was exhausted. Inside the Hall of Vows, candles surrounded an ancient standing mirror framed with carved wolves. Claire took the marked position before it. Everett's assistants adjusted her shoulders, hands, and chin as though she were part of the furniture. The bride must face the mirror, one instructed. The bride must repeat each response clearly. Claire stared at her own tired reflection. Her fair skin looked pale beneath the ceremonial lights. Her long chestnut hair had escaped its pins. The thin crescent scar inside her left wrist showed above the silver sleeve. She did not resemble a queen. She resembled a seamstress trapped inside someone else's future. Megan stood near the doorway, trying not to laugh at the absurdity. At least the dress fits, she whispered. Because I altered it. You repaired the bride's gown, the veil, the delivery ledger, and half the ceremony. You may as well marry the king yourself. Claire was too tired to guard her tongue. She looked into the old mirror and said, fine. I will be the Alpha King's bride for one day. Then perhaps everyone will finally stop asking me to fix his wedding. The mirror flashed silver. Every candle flame bent toward the glass. Claire stepped back. Everett's head snapped around. Somewhere beyond the hall, a bell rang once. Megan's smile vanished. Claire, she whispered, what did you just do? The silver flash in the mirror had barely faded when every bell in Blackwell Palace began to ring. Claire stepped away from the glass, the oversized rehearsal gown dragging behind her, while Everett Crane stared at the mirror with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not anger. Fear. What did it record? Claire asked. Everett crossed the hall and seized the silver-bound ceremony book from its stand. He turned pages too quickly, then stopped at an old section marked with a black ribbon. Megan moved closer to Claire. That does not look harmless. It was a joke, Claire said. Everett looked up. Not before a royal vow mirror. The words chilled the room. 2 ceremonial guards appeared at the hall entrance, followed by Commander Ethan Cole. Behind him came Alpha King Nathaniel Blackwell. Claire had seen him only from a distance during state ceremonies, always surrounded by nobles and silence. Up close, he seemed even larger. With broad shoulders beneath a black military coat, thick dark hair, and a sharply controlled face that gave nothing away. His golden eyes moved from the glowing mirror to Claire, then to the crescent scar inside her exposed wrist. For one suspended second, the king forgot to look like a king. Recognition crossed his face so quickly Claire almost believed she imagined it. Then his expression closed again. Who spoke the vow, he asked. Everett answered first. A workshop servant made an inappropriate remark during rehearsal. Claire straightened. I am a seamstress. Nathaniel's gaze returned to her. What did you say? She repeated the words exactly. She did not soften them or pretend someone else had spoken. The king looked toward the mirror. Silver letters had appeared across its surface. A willing bride has offered one day beneath the crown. Under the old law, the king may accept before midnight. Megan whispered, "That sounds less like a rehearsal." "It is an obsolete custom," Everett said quickly. "The mirror should have been deactivated decades ago." "But it was not," Nathaniel replied. His voice was quiet enough to make everyone else silent. Everett closed the book. "Your Majesty, the council is prepared to confirm Lady Amelia's engagement at dawn." This interruption can be dismissed. "Can it?" Nathaniel asked. "The old law grants the king 1 day to test a voluntary bride before accepting a political match." Claire looked between them. "I did not volunteer for a political test." Nathaniel's eyes settled on her again. "No. You offered to be my bride for 1 day. As a joke. The mirror does not understand humor. Then the mirror should not make legal decisions." Megan made a small approving sound. Everett looked offended. Nathaniel looked almost amused. The moment passed when footsteps filled the corridor. 3 council officials entered carrying sealed folders. Everett turned toward them with visible relief. "The accidental statement has been identified. The seamstress will be removed, and the scheduled confirmation will continue." The oldest official opened one folder. "Not so simple. The mirror has registered the offer under the bride for a day. Statute. If the king accepts before midnight, the political engagement is suspended until the temporary rites are completed." Claire looked at Nathaniel. "Do not accept." He studied her face. "If I refuse immediately, the council will proceed with Lady Amelia's engagement at dawn." "That sounds like your problem." "It is." His honesty surprised her. Everett stepped between them. "The woman has no standing to interfere." "She has enough standing for the mirror," Nathaniel said. Everett's jaw tightened. "She also disrupted a royal rehearsal, entered restricted ceremonial space, and made a false vow before witnesses. If the king refuses her offer, the council may charge her with sabotage." Megan moved beside Claire. "She was ordered into this hall." Everett ignored her. "The workshop will also be reviewed for negligence." Claire understood the threat at once. Mrs. Reed could lose the royal contract. Megan could lose her wages. Every apprentice could be dismissed. The old pattern closed around her again. Someone else created the problem, and Claire became the cheapest person available to repair it. Nathaniel seemed to read something in her expression. "Leave us," he told the council. Everett objected. "Your Majesty, this decision concerns succession." Golden light entered Nathaniel's eyes. "Leave." The room emptied in seconds. Even Everett obeyed, though he took the ceremony book with him. Ethan and Megan remained near the doors. Nathaniel approached Claire slowly. The closer he came, the more aware she became of the difference between them. She wore an unfinished gown pinned at one shoulder. He wore authority as if it had been tailored into his bones. "You can refuse," he said. Everett just explained why I cannot. He explained the consequences he intends to create. "Will you stop him?" "If you ask me to." Claire stared at him. "Why would you help me?" His gaze dropped again to the scar on her wrist. "Because someone should have helped you before." The answer made no sense. "Do you know me?" He took too long to reply. "I know the scar." Claire covered it with her other hand. "How?" "Not here." "That is not an answer." "It is the only one I can give before the council returns." He moved to the ceremonial table and placed a blank sheet of royal parchment on it. "The bride for a day custom includes 3 vows. You may stop before any one of them. If you stop, the temporary claim ends." "And the sabotage charge?" "I will dismiss it." "The workshop review?" "Cancelled." "Megan?" "Protected." "Mrs. Reed?" "Protected." Claire searched his face for mockery and found none. "Why not simply order all of that without involving me?" "Because if I reject the mirror's offer, the council confirms my engagement to Amelia at dawn. If I accept, I gain 1 day to challenge the arrangement. So I would be solving your problem." "Yes." The blunt answer hurt less than a pretty lie would have. Nathaniel continued. "And I would be solving yours." "That sounds like a contract." "No. Contracts remove uncertainty. This will create more of it." Claire almost laughed despite herself. "At least you are honest." "I am trying to be." The silver mirror pulsed behind them, as though reminding both of them that midnight was approaching. Claire thought of the shop she wanted, the savings she had lost, and the people whose livelihoods Everett could destroy. She also thought of the king looking at her scar as if he had spent years waiting to see it again. "If I agree," she said, "I want terms in writing." Nathaniel handed her the pen. "Name them." Claire stepped to the table. Her hands stopped trembling when they touched paper. Paper could be measured. Language could be repaired if one found the weak seams. "First, Megan keeps her position and cannot be questioned without me present." Nathaniel wrote it down. "Second, the workshop is not punished for anything that happened tonight." He wrote that too. "Third, I can stop before any vow without being charged, fined, confined, or publicly disgraced by the crown." His pen paused only long enough for him to look at her. "Agreed." "Fourth, no one touches me for ceremonial purposes without asking." "Agreed." "Fifth, you do not use my name to humiliate Lady Amelia. She did not cause this." Nathaniel's expression softened slightly. "Agreed." "Sixth, I keep my wages for every hour I lose in the workshop. Double." "Wages." "I did not ask for double." "You should have." Claire considered arguing, then decided this was one problem she could allow someone else to fix. "Fine." Nathaniel signed the page and turned it toward her. She read every line twice. "You added something. You may request any information related to the ceremony." "Including what the third vow means?" His eyes held hers. "Including that." The silver mirror brightened. Ethan checked the clock. 3 minutes to midnight. Nathaniel did not reach for Claire. He stood beside the table and waited. The choice was imperfect. If she refused, Everett would punish the workshop and use her as proof that Omegas could not be trusted near royal ceremonies. If she accepted, she would become the subject of every rumor in Greyhaven. Her quiet life would end before morning. Claire looked at Megan. Her friend gave no signal, no pressure, only worried support. Then Claire looked at Nathaniel. "One day," she said. "Nothing beyond the third vow unless I choose it." "Nothing," he promised. Claire signed. The moment the pen left the parchment, silver light raced across the mirror. Bells rang throughout the palace. The rehearsal gown transformed from borrowed fabric into public evidence of a royal claim. Outside the hall, servants began receiving orders before Claire had even taken a full breath. Nathaniel offered his hand but did not move it closer. "May I?" She looked at his open palm. For once, saying yes did not feel like surrender because she had written the conditions herself. Claire placed her hand in his. "For one day." His golden eyes flared at the contact. "For one day," he agreed. The doors opened. Everett stood outside with the council, his face cold. Nathaniel turned toward them without releasing Claire's hand. "Suspend the engagement confirmation," he ordered. "Prepare the morning vow, the pack petition, and the moon banquet. The palace will recognize Claire Bennett as my chosen bride until the final vow." Everett's gaze sharpened. "And if she fails?" Claire answered before Nathaniel could. "Then I stop." The old version of her would have lowered her eyes after speaking to a lord. This time, she did not. Everett looked at her as though she had become dangerous. Perhaps she had. By midnight, the workshop seamstress had signed away her anonymity, suspended a royal engagement, and stepped into a ceremony designed by men who knew more than they had told her. Her old life had closed behind her. Ahead waited 3 vows, a king who recognized her scar, and an entire palace already preparing for a wedding she had not promised to finish. Claire discovered before sunrise that becoming a royal bride required 12 women, 6 trays of jewelry, 3 written schedules, and absolutely no interest in what the bride wanted. The Queen's gallery had been prepared in less than an hour. White flowers covered the windows. Silver fabric hung from the ceiling. A row of attendants waited beside an ivory dressing screen while 2 court seamstresses unfolded a gown so heavily embroidered that Claire estimated it weighed at least 20 pounds. "No," she said. The senior attendant blinked. "No to which part?" Claire looked around the room. "Most of it." Megan, standing near the door under Ethan's protection, covered a smile with her hand. Nathaniel had escorted Claire to the gallery and remained beside the fireplace while palace officials explained the first vow. He had changed into a black ceremonial coat, the high collar emphasizing the sharp lines of his face. His presence silenced every conversation that rose above a whisper, yet he had not issued a single order since entering. Claire suspected he was waiting to see what she would do. The senior attendant lifted the gown. "This is the traditional garment for the morning vow." Claire examined the silver thread seams. "The shoulder balance is wrong. It was created from Lady Amelia's measurements. Then it was created for Lady Amelia. The difference is minimal. The difference is 2 inches through the waist and nearly 3 across the shoulders. If you lace it tightly enough to fit me, I will not be able to breathe." The attendant looked toward Nathaniel. Claire followed her gaze. "Do not ask him. I am the one wearing it." The room became still. Nathaniel's golden eyes rested on Claire with an unreadable expression. "She is correct," he said. The attendant lowered the gown. "Then we will alter it." "No," Claire replied. "There is not enough time to rebuild the internal structure safely. Bring the slate blue fitting dress from the workshop." "That is not a bridal gown. It is a gown I can walk in. The court expects ivory." Claire folded her arms. "The court also expected Lady Amelia until midnight. It will survive another adjustment." Megan made a sound that was definitely laughter this time. Nathaniel's mouth moved slightly. The attendants looked horrified. Claire had spent years disappearing behind fabric, but now every person in the room watched her as if a seamstress refusing an uncomfortable dress were a constitutional crisis. The absurdity almost helped. "Bring the blue dress," Nathaniel ordered. The senior attendant bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." "And fewer people," Claire added. "I do not need 12 attendants to change clothes." "Royal dressing requires witnesses," the woman said. "Why?" "Tradition." "That is not an explanation." Nathaniel turned to Ethan. "How many witnesses does the law require?" 2. "Then 10 may leave." The room emptied so quickly that Claire barely had time to move aside. When only Megan, the senior attendant, and one court seamstress remained, Nathaniel stepped toward the door. Claire noticed the movement. "You are leaving?" "You asked for fewer people." "I did." He inclined his head. "Then I will wait outside." It was a small thing, but it unsettled her. Powerful men often treated privacy as a privilege they could grant or ignore. Nathaniel behaved as though her request had created a boundary even he could not cross without permission. After the attendants dressed her, Claire stood before the mirror in the slate blue gown. It was simple, fitted at the waist, and soft enough to move naturally. The court seamstress reached for a tray of jewels. Claire shook her head. "1 piece. The ceremonial rules allow 7. I have 1 neck." Megan selected a narrow silver chain with a moonstone pendant. Claire approved. Then she noticed the inside hem of the gown. The names of the workshop women had been removed from the maker's strip, replaced by the royal household mark. Who did this? The seamstress looked confused. "Royal garments carry the crown label. This was made in our workshop. The palace owns the work." Claire touched the empty strip. The erasure felt familiar. Beautiful things appeared before nobles as if no human hands had shaped them. The women who cut, stitched, repaired, and pressed were expected to vanish with the loose threads. When Nathaniel returned, Claire was holding the removed label. "I want the makers' names restored." The senior attendant stiffened. "That is not customary." "Neither am I." Nathaniel looked at the label, then at Claire. "Which names?" She listed them from memory. Megan Turner had embroidered the cuffs. Mrs. Reed had drafted the original pattern. 2 apprentices had stitched the lining. Claire had adjusted the waist and rebuilt the collar. Nathaniel turned to the court seamstress. "Restore every name." "Before the morning vow?" "Before she wears it." Claire looked at him. "You do not have to agree with every demand I make." "I do not." "You have so far. Your demands have been reasonable." "That may change." "I assumed it would." The answer drew a reluctant smile from her. The silver mirror in the Hall of Vows had created the temporary claim, but the law required them to remain within sight of one another until the first vow was completed. That was the reason Nathaniel accompanied her through the palace instead of sending an escort. It did not explain why his attention followed every movement of her left wrist, or why his wolf scent sharpened whenever the crescent scar showed beneath her sleeve. Claire could sense emotions through scent more clearly than most omegas, though years of suppressant medicine had dulled the ability. From Nathaniel she caught cedar, cold stone, and something restrained beneath both. Recognition. Regret. A protective instinct powerful enough to frighten her. "You are staring at my scar again," she said as they entered the covered gallery leading toward the chapel. "I know. That is usually where someone apologizes and stops." "I am not sorry." Claire stopped walking. The guards behind them halted at once. Nathaniel turned. "Then explain." His gaze moved to the windows, where dawn had begun turning the courtyard silver. 12 years ago, during the Southgate riot, a girl hid me beneath a brown wool cloak and led me through a service alley. Claire's breath caught. A memory surfaced in fragments, shouting beyond a market square, a frightened boy in expensive boots, the weight of his arm around her shoulders, a brass button tearing her wrist as she pulled him beneath the cloak. She had been 13. He had never given his name. "That was you." "Yes. You were the boy with the broken coat. I was the crown prince. You complained like a boy with a broken coat." His expression shifted with something almost warm. "You told me to be quiet or you would leave me behind. You were attracting attention. You saved my life." Claire looked away. "I helped a frightened child reach a guarded street. You were a child too." The intensity in his voice made her uncomfortable. Gratitude could become another kind of claim. "Do not turn that night into a debt I have to collect." "I am not." "Then why did you accept the mirror's offer the moment you saw the scar?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Because the council planned to bind me to a political marriage at dawn, because Everett threatened your workshop, and because I recognized the only person who once helped me without knowing who I was." "That still sounds like 3 reasons to use me." "It is 3 reasons I believed you deserved the choice Everett was trying to take from both of us." Claire studied him. He was too controlled to be easy to read, but the faint metallic edge in his scent told her he was afraid she would reject the explanation. That fear surprised her more than the confession. Before she could answer, they reached the chapel. Nobles filled the silver benches. Lady Amelia stood near the front in a pale gold gown, composed but watchful. Claire expected anger. Instead, Amelia's gaze moved over the repaired slate blue dress and paused at the restored names stitched inside the open cuff. Something thoughtful crossed her face. Everett waited beside the ceremonial platform. "The temporary bride is late." Claire checked the wall clock. "By 40 seconds. Royal ceremonies do not wait for workshop habits. Workshop habits are why your ceremonies have clothes." A few servants near the rear lowered their faces to hide smiles. Everett's expression hardened. "Take your place." Claire moved beside Nathaniel. The first vow required the temporary bride to stand at his right hand while he received petitions from the pack. It was designed to test whether she could endure public scrutiny and whether the king would listen to her counsel. Claire had expected a symbolic performance. Instead, the first petitioner was an elderly tailor whose guild had not received payment for winter uniforms. Everett attempted to dismiss the complaint as an accounting delay. Claire recognized the fabric code on the invoice. "That shipment was completed 6 weeks ago," she said. Everett looked at her coldly. "You were not asked." Nathaniel's voice cut through the chapel. "She stands under the first vow. She may speak." Claire took the invoice and examined the silver cord sealing it. "This cord belongs to the Office of Royal Ceremony, not the Treasury." Someone rerouted the payment request after delivery. Everett's expression did not change, but his scent sharpened with irritation. Claire noticed. Nathaniel noticed her noticing. "Can you prove it?" he asked. "The knot can." She turned the document over. Workshop knots are tied clockwise because the cord must lie flat against fabric. This one was tied counterclockwise, the method used for ceremonial packets. The payment request passed through Everett's office. Murmurs moved through the chapel. Nathaniel ordered an immediate audit and released emergency payment to the guild. The tailor bowed to Claire before he bowed to the king. Everett looked at her as if she had stepped out of place and become difficult to return. After the petition, a nobleman named Lord Harrison approached during the ceremonial reception. He lifted Claire's hand without asking, inspecting the faint needle marks along her fingers. Nathaniel's expression turned cold. Claire pulled her hand free. "Do not touch me." Harrison laughed. "Forgive me. I was only wondering whether Greyhaven has fallen so low that a bride may arrive with a laborer's hands." The chapel became silent. Claire felt the old instinct to smooth the moment, to laugh and prevent trouble. Before she could speak, Nathaniel stepped beside her. His eyes turned gold. "Those hands have done more for this palace than yours." Harrison's face drained of color. Nathaniel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Apologize." Harrison bowed to Claire. "I apologize, Miss Bennet." She looked at Nathaniel after the man retreated. "You made the entire chapel afraid of him touching my hand. They should be afraid of ignoring your refusal." The answer warmed something inside her she did not want warmed. The morning vow ended when Nathaniel placed a silver ribbon around Claire's wrist, directly above the crescent scar. He paused before touching her. "May I?" Every noble watched. So did Everett. Claire understood the significance. Nathaniel could have treated ceremony as automatic permission. Instead, he waited for her answer before the entire court. "Yes," she said. His fingers brushed her skin as he tied the ribbon. A quiet pulse moved through her dormant wolf, faint but unmistakable. Nathaniel felt it too. Gold flared in his eyes, and the air between them changed. It was not a completed bond. It was recognition beginning to wake. The first vow had tied them together until the second could be attempted. They would share meals, petitions, and the Queen's gallery for the rest of the day. Claire had entered the chapel believing Nathaniel was a king using an inconvenient seamstress to escape a political marriage. She left knowing he remembered the girl beneath the old cloak, respected the woman standing before him, and might be more dangerous to her heart than the ceremony itself. The first vow changed the way the palace looked at Claire, but the second vow changed the way Nathaniel did. By late morning, they had been moved from the chapel to the royal workroom, a high-ceilinged chamber overlooking the east courtyard, where petitions, ledgers, and ceremonial plans covered a long black table. The Bride for a Day statute required them to complete a shared judgment before sunset and exchange one meaningful object before the moon banquet. Everett had arranged both tasks. Claire suspected that meant neither would be simple. The first challenge arrived in the form of 6 representatives from the royal workshops. Tailors, embroiderers, dyers, and leather workers stood before the table with unpaid invoices in their hands. Everett presented the dispute as a clerical delay. Claire knew better the moment she saw the paper. "These totals do not match the fabric codes," she said. Everett's expression cooled. "The Treasury has already reviewed them." Then the Treasury reviewed altered copies. Nathaniel sat at the head of the table, but he did not interrupt. Claire examined the invoices one by one. Each listed premium silver cloth, though the delivery marks showed standard wool. The workers had been paid for the cheaper material, while the palace had been charged for the more expensive one. Someone had taken the difference. "The weights are wrong," Claire said. "A 40-yard bolt of this weave should weigh close to 60 pounds. The receipt lists 82. One of the dyers nodded quickly. "That is correct." Everett folded his hands. "Or the workers falsified the delivery." Claire turned the invoice over. "No." The seal was stitched through the paper with a double-loop knot. Workshop seals use a single loop so the invoice can be opened without tearing the edge. This was resealed after delivery. She looked at the silver cord. The knot was tied by someone trained in ceremonial document handling. Nathaniel's gaze shifted to Everett. "Your office." "My office handles hundreds of documents," Everett replied. "Then you will not object to an audit," Nathaniel said. Everett's jaw tightened. Claire felt the change in his scent, a dry metallic irritation beneath expensive cedar. Her weakened omega senses should not have noticed it so clearly. Since the first vow, everything had sharpened. Nathaniel's emotions reached her most strongly. He smelled calm on the surface, but beneath it lay restrained approval and something warmer she did not want to name. "The workers should be paid today," Claire said. Everett looked at her as though she had forgotten her place. "That is not your decision." Nathaniel turned to Claire. "What would you decide?" The entire room waited. Claire had spent years knowing how to fix problems without being permitted to make decisions. Now the king had placed the choice in her hands. Pay the full documented wages from the emergency household fund, she said. Freeze the disputed accounts. Audit every ceremonial invoice from the last year. Do not punish the workshop staff while the review is open. Nathaniel nodded. Done. Everett's face became very still. The first small shift was complete. Claire had not merely identified the problem. Nathaniel had trusted her judgment in public. The second challenge came at lunch. Tradition required the temporary bride and king to eat alone in the royal dining room, but Claire refused to leave the workshop representatives waiting for their payments. Nathaniel surprised everyone by moving the meal to the costume workshop. A long table was cleared between cutting boards and dress forms. The king sat on a wooden chair beside Claire while apprentices tried not to stare. Megan set down bowls of stew with hands that trembled only slightly. Your Majesty, she said. Megan, Claire warned. What? Megan whispered. I am attempting not to spill food on the Alpha King. Nathaniel looked at the bowl. That would not be the worst thing the palace has done to me today. Several workers laughed before remembering who had spoken. The tension eased. Claire noticed Nathaniel's ceremonial coat had torn slightly near one cuff where the silver ribbon from the first vow had caught against the table. Hold still, she said. Every person in the workshop froze. Nathaniel looked at her. Why? Your cuff is coming apart. It can wait. It cannot. The seam will split before the banquet. She reached for the repair kit at her waist, then stopped. May I? His golden eyes softened. Yes. Claire stood close enough to feel the warmth of him while she repaired the black fabric with short, precise stitches. The room had become so quiet that the pull of thread through cloth sounded loud. You are making them nervous, she murmured. I am sitting. You sit like a king. I have limited alternatives. Try looking. Less capable of ending a conversation with one word. No, Claire glanced up. He was teasing her. The realization startled a smile from her before she could hide it. Nathaniel watched that smile as though it mattered. The second small shift happened there, in a workshop full of people, while Claire repaired his sleeve and he allowed himself to be ordinary for less than a minute. When she finished, Nathaniel examined the cuff. Better than new. That is the job. You say that as though repair is the same as restoration. Claire threaded the needle back into her kit. Sometimes the repaired place becomes the strongest part. His gaze held hers. I hope that is true. The third challenge arrived during the afternoon rehearsal for the moon banquet. Claire entered the Queen's gallery to find attendants removing the slate blue gown she had chosen and replacing it with a white ceremonial dress covered in silver embroidery. The gown was beautiful. It was also designed to erase her. The sleeves concealed the needle marks on her hands. The collar covered her scar. The veil was thick enough to blur her face. Who approved this? Claire asked. Everett stood beside the mirror. The bride must appear worthy of the crown. You mean unrecognizable? I mean appropriate. Claire touched the heavy veil. I will not wear this. The second vow requires ceremonial presentation. Nathaniel entered from the adjoining gallery. His gaze moved from Claire to the gown. Does the law require this dress? The law requires a bridal garment, Everett said. Then the blue gown qualifies. It lacks symbolic purity. Claire looked at him. Fabric does not make a person pure. Everett's expression hardened. You have benefited greatly from the king's patience. That is not an answer. Nathaniel stepped beside her. She will wear what she chooses. Everett bowed stiffly. As you command. Claire waited until he left before turning to Nathaniel. You cannot keep solving every problem by ordering people. It worked. This time. What would you have done? I would have asked who made the white gown. An attendant answered quietly. The outer shell came from the ceremonial office. The lining was completed in the south workshop. Claire examined the inner seam. The stitches were too tight, the spacing too exact for handwork. She slid 2 fingers beneath the lining and found a hidden fold. Inside it was a narrow paper strip marked with a financial account number. Megan leaned closer. That should not be there. No, Claire said. It should not. The number matched one of the altered workshop accounts from the morning. Someone had hidden a transfer reference inside the bridal gown, perhaps intending to move the evidence after the banquet. Nathaniel looked toward the door Everett had used. You were right. Claire folded the strip into her palm. About what? Asking who made it. The fourth shift was information. Everett's ceremonial office now connected the false invoices, the hidden account, and the bridal preparations. Claire still did not know his full plan, but the threat was no longer abstract. He had built it into the fabric around her. The second vow required an exchange of meaningful objects at sunset. In the Queen's gallery, Nathaniel placed a small brass button on a silver tray. It was scratched, darkened with age, and carved with a tiny wolf crest. Claire stared at it. Where did you get that? You tore it from my coat 12 years ago. Memory returned with painful clarity. A frightened boy beneath a brown cloak. Her hand gripping his sleeve. A brass button catching against her wrist and cutting the crescent scar. You kept it. It was the only proof I had that you were real. Claire looked up. The king who could own nearly anything had preserved a broken button for 12 years. Why did you search for me? Because you saved me without asking who I was. His voice lowered. And because after my mother died, you were the last person who treated me like a frightened boy instead of a crown. The honesty made the room feel smaller. Claire placed her own object on the tray, a worn silver thimble, dented at the rim. This belonged to the woman who taught me to sew at the foster home. She was the first person who told me I was good at something. Nathaniel picked it up carefully. And the first person who made you believe usefulness. Was the price of being kept? Claire went still. You listen too closely. Only when you speak. The words settled between them with dangerous softness. The second vow recognized the exchange. Silver light moved between the button and the thimble, then faded. Claire's dormant wolf stirred again, stronger than before, pressing toward Nathaniel with a recognition she did not understand. His eyes flashed gold. He took one step closer, then stopped. Claire. Her name sounded different in his voice, stripped of title and ceremony. Do not, she whispered, though she was not sure whether she meant do not come closer or do not make me want you to. Nathaniel waited. What do you want? He asked. The old answer would have been whatever was easiest for him. Claire forced herself to remain still until the truth formed. I want you to stay, she said. But I do not want this ceremony deciding what that means. Then it will not. He stayed exactly where he was. No touch. No demand. The restraint felt more intimate than a kiss. The fifth challenge came after dark. Megan failed to return from the workshop. Claire found a note beneath the thimble box, written in a hurried hand. Leave the banquet before the third vow, or the workshop closes and Megan loses everything. Attached was a copy of the royal payroll showing Claire's name beside years of secret payments from a Crown Relief account. This is false, she said. Nathaniel read the page. The signature matches yours. Because someone copied it. Can you prove that? Claire examined the paper. The fibers were wrong. The account was old, but the page was new. A faint ridge ran beneath the ink where the signature had been transferred. Graphite tracing, she said. And this seal cord came from Everett's office. Nathaniel's expression turned cold. I will send Ethan for Megan. Quietly, Claire said. If Everett knows we found the note, he may move her. Nathaniel nodded. Agreed. That was the final shift. Dependence. He needed Claire's eye for fabric and forged records. She needed his reach, guards, and authority. Neither could expose Everett alone. Yet the deeper threat remained hidden. Someone had not only prepared false evidence. Someone had expected Claire to reach the third vow and then panic. As Ethan left with the note, Nathaniel looked at the two exchanged objects on the table. The moon banquet begins in 1 hour. Claire closed her fingers around the brass button. And after that comes the third vow. His face became unreadable. Yes. You still have not told me exactly what it does. The silence lasted 1 second too long. Claire felt the truth in his scent before he answered. Fear. Guilt. Nathaniel, she said, what happens if we finish it? He looked at her, and for the first time that day, the Alpha King seemed uncertain. That, he said quietly, is what Everett is counting on you not knowing. If the third vow can change my life, Then you do not get to protect me from the truth, Claire said. Nathaniel stood across the Queen's gallery with the forged payroll in one hand and the old brass button in the other. Moonlight turned the tall windows silver, but the room felt smaller than it had an hour earlier, narrowed by the answer he had delayed. You are right, he said. That does not tell me what happens. The records are incomplete. Claire watched his face. That is not the same as knowing nothing. His scent carried cedar, cold stone, and the unmistakable sharpness of guilt. Her weakened omega senses had grown stronger with every vow, especially around him. She did not know whether the ceremony caused it or whether years of suppressants had begun to fail, but she could no longer ignore the emotions he tried to hide. I know the third vow is binding in a way the first two are not, he said. Binding for one day? Possibly longer. The words settled between them like a locked door. Claire placed the forged payroll on the table. And you plan to tell me when? Before the banquet. The banquet begins in less than an hour. I intended to confirm the exact law first. You accepted my offer without confirming the exact law? I accepted because Everett was about to destroy your workshop and force my engagement to Amelia. You keep returning to the reasons that made your decision reasonable. Her voice remained calm, though anger tightened her chest. I am asking about the part where you let me make mine without all the information. Nathaniel lowered his gaze. I failed you there. The admission took some of the force from her anger because he did not defend himself. Claire had spent her life around people who wrapped excuses around every mistake until the injured person felt guilty for noticing. Nathaniel simply stood inside the truth. It did not erase what he had done, but it mattered. Then we do not complete the third vow until I know everything, she said. Agreed. Even if the council removes you? Agreed. Even if Everett closes the workshop? I will reopen it under royal protection. That is still you solving everything with power. Then tell me what help looks like. Claire opened her mouth and stopped. No one had asked her that before. Help had always arrived as an instruction, a debt, or a favor she would later repay. Find Megan, she said. Do not frighten the workshop staff. Do not arrest anyone based only on my suspicion. And bring me every version of the bride for a day law, including the ones Everett thinks no one remembers. Nathaniel nodded. Ethan is already searching for Megan. I will send Abigail Reed to reassure the workshop. The restrictive legal archive opens only with the king's seal and the ceremonial minister's key. Everett has the key. Yes. Then we need another way. There may be copies in my mother's private records. Claire looked at him. Your mother participated in this ritual? No. She spent years trying to remove it. That answer carried a grief deeper than guilt. Nathaniel moved toward a cabinet near the fireplace and unlocked it with his signet ring. Inside lay several narrow boxes, each labeled in a careful feminine hand. He selected one and placed it on the table. The lid held the faded crest of Queen Helena Blackwell. Claire had repaired royal garments bearing that crest, though the queen had died before Claire entered palace service. Official portraits showed a flawless woman in white silk, always smiling, always standing half a step behind the king. She hated those portraits, Nathaniel said. Claire glanced at him. I did not ask. You were looking at the crest the same way everyone looks at her portraits. As if perfection must have been easy. He opened the box. Inside were folded letters, dress sketches, and several pages of proposed legal reforms. My mother was chosen by the council because she photographed well, spoke carefully, and never embarrassed my father in public. They called her the ideal queen. Was she? She was intelligent, impatient, and capable of turning every formal dinner into an argument about school funding. Claire smiled despite herself. That sounds inconvenient. My father thought so. Nathaniel's expression softened at the memory, then closed again. After the wedding, every choice was made for her. Her clothes, schedule, charities, even the questions she was allowed to answer in public. When she objected, he said the crown required sacrifice. Claire touched the edge of one dress sketch. A white ceremonial gown had been drawn with a high veil covering the face. Across the design, Queen Helena had written, "A symbol cannot breathe." She wrote this after the council ordered her to wear the founder's veil during a treaty ceremony. She refused. My father locked her rooms until she agreed. Claire looked up sharply. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. I was 15. I stood outside the door and told myself he was protecting the crown. You believed him? I wanted to. It was easier than admitting the most powerful man I knew was afraid of a woman making her own choice. The answer explained the care with which Nathaniel asked before touching her. It also explained why his failures cut so deeply. He knew exactly what a locked room and incomplete truth could become. Is that why you never married? Claire asked. Partly. And the other part? Every proposed bride arrived with a council strategy attached to her name, including Amelia. Especially Amelia. Claire detected no cruelty in his voice, only exhaustion. She is not the problem, he continued. She has been managed by her family as carefully as I have been managed by mine. Then why did she agree? Perhaps for the same reason you accepted blame for a dress you did not cut. Claire looked away. You noticed that? Mrs. Reed told Ethan what happened. Caroline would have lost her place. And you lost wages you needed for your shop. Claire's head turned. How do you know about the shop? Megan told Ethan while demanding he search faster. That sounded exactly like Megan. Nathaniel opened another letter. You want a storefront near the South Market. A small one. With fair wages and names sewn into every garment. Yes, that is not a small ambition. It is compared to ruling a kingdom. No, it is simply closer to the ground. His respect warmed her more than praise should have. Claire had been complimented for neat seams, fast hands, and obedience. No one had called her dream an ambition worth honoring. A knock sounded. Ethan entered with Megan beside him, angry, tired, and very much unharmed. Claire crossed the room before protocol could stop her and pulled Megan into an embrace. Where were you? Locked in the account room under the West Archive, Megan said. Someone left a forged dismissal notice and expected me to panic. Did they question you? Nathaniel asked. Megan looked at him, then at Claire. May I answer honestly? Please, Claire said. A clerk from Everett's office offered to keep my family debt from being collected if I signed a statement saying Claire planned the whole ceremony. Claire's stomach turned cold. Did you sign? No, Megan lifted her chin. I told him Claire plans sleeves better than conspiracies. Nathaniel's mouth almost curved. Ethan placed a bundle of papers on the table. We found these in the account room. Old relief payments under Claire's name, but the dates begin when she was 13. Claire frowned. I never received relief money. Someone did, Ethan said. The account was opened after the Southgate riot. Nathaniel went still. Claire felt the change in his scent before she understood it. Recognition. Anger. My mother created a recovery fund for civilians who helped during the riot, he said. You should have been included. I was not. The records say you were. Megan examined the paper. Then someone redirected the money. Claire looked at the neat lines of payments made in her name for 12 years. The forged payroll from earlier was not entirely invented. Everett had built the accusation around a real account Claire had never known existed. Why keep paying it? She asked. Because closing the account might reveal the original theft, Nathaniel said. Or because someone wanted a paper trail ready if you were ever found. The possibility made the room colder. Claire had not been chosen randomly during rehearsal. Someone had known her name, her scar, and her connection to Nathaniel long before she made the joke. Everett knew who I was, she said. Nathaniel's eyes turned gold. Most likely. Then he placed me in front of that mirror. Yes. Megan looked between them. Why? No one answered because the full shape of the plan still remained hidden. Nathaniel dismissed Ethan only after assigning 2 guards to Megan and the workshop, both in plain clothes. He also ordered food brought to the Queen's Gallery. Claire objected that she was not hungry. Her stomach betrayed her with a loud, undignified sound. Megan smiled. The future bride has spoken. Do not start. Nathaniel looked at the serving table. You have eaten nothing since morning. I had half a roll. That is not a meal. It was a large half. He said nothing, but 10 minutes later he sat with her at the low table near the fire and ate the same plain soup, bread, and apples brought from the workshop kitchen. He did not summon silver plates or ceremonial staff. When Claire reached for the smallest piece of bread, he exchanged it for the larger one without comment. She stared at him. Did you just choose my portion? Yes. That violates the spirit of asking. He returned both pieces to the plate. Choose. She took the larger one. Thank you. You're welcome. The correction was almost comical, but it mattered. He did not become offended when she challenged him. He adjusted. Later, Claire found him standing near the balcony doors, one hand pressed against the stone frame. The gold in his eyes was too bright. What is wrong? Nothing. Her senses caught the lie immediately. Your scent changes when you lie. That seems intrusive. It is not intentional. She approached slowly. Is your wolf unstable? Nathaniel looked toward the courtyard. The first two vows strengthened the recognition between us. It is not a bond, but my wolf responds to you. How? He becomes calmer when you are near. And when I leave? Less calm. Claire understood the danger hidden inside the answer. If the third vow ended the ceremony, Nathaniel might lose not only political protection, but the peace her presence gave his wolf. Is that another reason you accepted? She asked. I did not know it would happen. His scent remained steady. Truth. Do you need me to touch you? Nathaniel turned toward her, surprise breaking through his control. No, that was too fast. He exhaled. I want you to. I do not need you to. The distinction mattered. Claire extended her hand. Then you may take it. He did not close the distance immediately. Are you certain? Yes. Nathaniel took her hand carefully. His palm was warm, his grip controlled. The gold in his eyes softened within seconds. Claire felt her own dormant wolf stir in answer, no longer weak and distant but cautious, curious, pressing toward the surface. The scar inside her wrist warmed beneath his thumb. The medicine, Nathaniel said quietly. What medicine? You said your foster home gave you suppressants. Most Omega wards receive them. Not for 12 years. Claire looked at him. How do you know how long? Your medical supply was paid through the same hidden account. Anger moved through him, dark and cold. Everett's office approved every shipment. The revelation frightened her. Someone had funded the suppression of her wolf while stealing money intended for her recovery. The same person had placed her before the vow mirror. They were preventing mate recognition, Nathaniel said. That is only a possibility. It is the most likely one. Do not decide before we have proof. His jaw tightened, then he nodded. You are right. He was learning. So was she. The silence between them became softer. Nathaniel's thumb rested near her scar but did not move. Claire remembered the frightened boy beneath her cloak and the king who had kept a broken button for 12 years. Why did you never stop looking? She asked. Because the night you saved me was the last time anyone helped me without wanting access to the crown. You did not know me. No, but I remembered your voice. What did I say? You told me I was breathing too loudly. Claire laughed, and the sound changed his face. For a moment, the dangerous king disappeared. The boy beneath the cloak remained. Nathaniel stepped slightly closer. Claire did not move away. His gaze dropped to her mouth, then returned to her eyes. Do you want me to kiss you? He asked. The question sent warmth through her, honest and immediate. She wanted to say yes. She also wanted answers. Wanting both did not make either false. Not while I still do not know what this ceremony means, she whispered. Nathaniel released her hand at once and stepped back. No coldness entered his face. No disappointment became punishment. Then we wait. Claire felt the old wound inside her open and heal by one small degree. She had refused something a king wanted, and he had not withdrawn his care. A second knock interrupted them. Mrs. Reed entered carrying a narrow leather case recovered from Queen Helena's private wardrobe. Inside lay a folded law page sewn into the lining of an unfinished veil. Her Majesty hid documents in garments when the council searched her rooms, Mrs. Reed explained. Claire opened the stitches with her thimble and drew out the page. At the top, in faded silver ink, were the words, "Final right of the bride for a day." Beneath them, the first sentence read, "When the third vow is freely completed before moonrise, the temporary bride shall no longer be considered temporary." Claire looked at Nathaniel. His face had gone still. The cost of losing each other had just become clear. So had the danger of staying. Claire read the hidden law twice before the meaning fully settled. The third vow was not a ceremonial ending. It was a legal beginning. If she and Nathaniel completed it freely before moonrise, the temporary role would become a permanent royal claim, and the Moon Council would be required to recognize her as the Alpha King's chosen bride. The Bride for a Day ritual had never been designed as harmless theater. It was an ancient path around political marriage law. You knew, Claire said. Nathaniel did not insult her with denial. I knew there was a possibility the final vow carried permanent force. A possibility? She held up the page. This is not vague. I had never seen the complete wording. But you knew enough to accept my joke before midnight. His face tightened. Yes. The answer changed every moment that had come before it. His patience in the Queen's gallery. His willingness to protect the workshop. The public defense of her hands. The brass button. The questions before every touch. None of those things became false, but they no longer stood alone. They existed inside a ceremony whose true consequence he had understood better than she had. You used me to stop your engagement, Claire said. At first, yes. The honesty hurt more than an excuse would have. And after that? After that, I wanted the day to continue. His golden eyes held hers. Not because of the law. You do not get to separate the law from the choice when you were the only one who knew they were connected. Nathaniel lowered his head once. You are right. Mrs. Reed and Megan stood quietly near the wardrobe, both understanding that the room had become too private for comfort and too important to leave. Claire placed the law page on the table. What exactly happens if we complete the vow? Nathaniel answered carefully. The bond becomes eligible for permanent recognition. You would have the legal right to claim the title of queen. The council could not force another marriage. Would I be married to you? Not fully. The Moon Council would still require confirmation, but refusing after the third vow would create a succession dispute. So I could technically walk away, but the entire kingdom would be told I had nearly accepted. Yes. And what happens if I stop now? The temporary claim ends. The council resumes pressure for my engagement to Amelia. Everett will likely accuse you of manipulating the ritual. And the workshop? Nathaniel's jaw hardened. He will use the forged accounts to close it. Claire looked at the silver thread running through the hidden page. Everett had arranged the mirror, selected her as the rehearsal bride, connected her name to stolen relief money, and threatened Megan at the exact moment Claire approached the final vow. He had not been reacting to an accident. He had prepared for it. He wanted me to reach this point, she said. Megan frowned. Why help you become queen if he hates the idea? He does not want me to become queen, Claire replied. He wants me to panic in public. Nathaniel's expression sharpened. If you stop before the third vow, he presents you as a fraud who disrupted succession. If you complete it, he challenges your legitimacy using the forged payments. Either way, the council gains control while the claim is investigated, Claire said. The pattern was suddenly clear. Everett had not built one trap. He had sewn two outcomes into the same garment. There is more, Mrs. Reed said. She lifted the unfinished veil from Queen Helena's case. Beneath the hem, another narrow line of stitching concealed a second document. Claire opened it with the tip of her needle. The page contained an amendment proposed years earlier by Queen Helena but never enacted. It stated that no final vow could be valid if either participant lacked full knowledge of its legal effect. Nathaniel read the clause. My mother tried to add informed consent to the ritual. Everett kept this hidden, Claire said. Because if the court knows I was not informed, the ceremony cannot bind me. Megan exhaled. Then you are safe. Not yet. Claire looked at the forged payroll. We still have to prove Everett manufactured the crisis. Otherwise he will say Nathaniel and I invented this page to escape the consequences. A knock sounded before anyone could answer. Ethan entered with Lady Amelia Prescott. She wore no ceremonial veil, only a pale gold traveling dress and an expression stripped of courtly politeness. Everett has called the moon banquet early, Amelia said. He intends to move directly into the third vow before the archive judges arrive. Nathaniel's eyes flashed. He has no authority to change the time. He claims a succession emergency. He says your bond response is already affecting royal judgment. Amelia looked at Claire. He also released copies of The payment records to the nobles. By now, half the palace believes you have been receiving secret money from the crown since childhood. Claire felt the old wound reopen. Once again, other people had made a mess and placed her name at the center of it. Once again, her value would be measured by how well she repaired what powerful people had broken. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Amelia's composure cracked just enough to reveal anger. "Because Everett also forged letters in my name. He told my father I had agreed to the marriage terms. He told me Nathaniel had requested them. We were both being moved toward a wedding neither of us chose." Nathaniel looked at her. "I am sorry." "So am I," Amelia replied. "But apologies can wait. Everett has ordered the Hall of Vows sealed at moonrise. If Claire does not appear, he will declare her absent refusal an act of fraud. If she appears, he will force a public answer." Claire looked at the hidden amendment, the forged accounts, and the silver cord from Everett's office. Their objective had changed. Surviving the ceremony was no longer enough. Exposing Everett was the only way to protect the workshop, clear her name, free Amelia, and prevent Nathaniel from being pushed into another controlled marriage. "We need the original payment ledgers," Claire said. "Not copies." Ethan nodded. "They're stored in the ceremonial archive." "And Everett has the key," Megan said. Claire picked up the white bridal gown and turned the lining outward. The hidden account number had been sewn into the fabric using a distinctive three-point anchoring stitch. His office hides records and garments because no one searches formal clothing. Mrs. Reed understood first. The banquet robes. "Every senior ceremonial officer wears one," Claire said. If Everett moved the original ledger pages, he may have placed them inside his own robe for transport. Nathaniel looked at her with renewed respect and something more painful beneath it. "What do you need?" "Access to the dressing rooms. Megan and Mrs. Reed with me. Amelia to delay the banquet procession. Ethan to keep the archive judges from being turned away. And me?" Claire met his gaze. Their relationship had changed too. He was no longer merely the king who had protected her, nor the frightened boy she once saved. He was the man who had withheld truth while trying to give her choice, and now had to prove he could stand beside a decision he did not control. "You do nothing to force the third vow," she said. "Even if stopping it costs you the council." Nathaniel did not hesitate. "Agreed. And if I say no in front of everyone? Then the ceremony ends. Even if it leaves you politically exposed? Even then." His scent remained steady. "Truth." Claire folded Queen Helena's amendment and placed it inside her sleeve. The day had begun with the goal of surviving a royal joke until moonrise. Now the real task stood before her: enter the Hall of Vows, expose a conspiracy hidden in cloth and law, and reclaim a decision that had been designed long before she ever spoke. Everett did not wait for moonrise. Before Claire, Megan, and Mrs. Reed could reach the ceremonial dressing rooms, palace bells rang 3 times, signaling an emergency closure. Guards sealed the workshop corridors. Servants were ordered away from the Queen's gallery. Every door leading to the Hall of Vows was placed under council control. Claire stood at the gallery window and watched workers remove her name from the temporary bridal schedule as if erasing chalk from fabric. A herald crossed the courtyard below and read a public accusation. "Claire Bennett is under investigation for manipulating the bride for a day ritual, receiving unauthorized royal payments, and conspiring to interfere with the lawful succession of Greyhaven." The words carried across the palace. Claire heard them repeated by people who had praised her an hour earlier. Opportunist. Fraud. Crown hunter. Each whisper returned her to the workshop, to Caroline's ruined gown, to every moment when someone else had made a mistake and Claire had been expected to carry the blame quietly. Only this time, the entire kingdom was watching. Megan turned from the door. They closed the workshop. "What?" "Everett's officers place seals over every entrance. Mrs. Reed and the apprentices have been suspended. They say the payroll records prove we helped you prepare the scheme." Claire felt the floor shift beneath her. The shop she had dreamed of opening had once seemed small but possible. Now even the work she already had was gone. Everett had taken her skill, her reputation, and the livelihoods she had tried to protect, then arranged them as evidence of ambition. Ethan entered with 2 guards behind him. His expression was controlled, but anger sharpened every word. The council has ordered Megan detained for questioning. Claire stepped in front of her friend. She refused to sign their statement. That is why they want her. Megan caught Claire's hand. Do not fix this by giving Everett what he wants. Claire looked at the fear Megan tried to hide. I will not let them take you. You cannot stop the council from inside this room. Nathaniel appeared in the doorway before Claire could answer. The entire gallery went silent. His black ceremonial coat was unfastened, and gold burned in his eyes with a force that made the guards lower their gazes. Megan stays, he said. Ethan nodded once. The council guards did not move. For one moment, relief swept through Claire. Then Nathaniel turned to Ethan. Secure the Queen's gallery. No one enters or leaves without my authorization until the hearing begins. Claire stared at him. No, Nathaniel's gaze found hers. There is a crowd outside the eastern wing. Everett released your name and the payment records to the city. Then let me speak. Not until I know the route is safe. You promised I could stop the ceremony and leave. You can stop the ceremony. From a locked room? His jaw tightened. This is temporary. The phrase struck the same wound as every gentle excuse she had heard before. Temporary deductions. Temporary blame. Temporary extra shifts. Temporary silence for everyone else's safety. You said you would not become your father. Nathaniel's expression changed. Do not compare this to what he did. Then do not repeat it. Gold flashed brighter in his eyes, but his voice remained low. Everett wants you exposed and frightened. I will not hand him that opportunity. You are not handing him anything. You are deciding for me. I am keeping you alive long enough to make the decision. I did not ask you to decide what risk I can survive. The room held its breath. Nathaniel looked toward the windows, where angry voices rose beyond the courtyard. If you walk out now, the council can claim you are disrupting the hearing. They will claim that anyway. Claire. A veil can protect a bride's face, she said, touching the white fabric laid across the table. A locked door erases her voice. Pain crossed his face because he understood the words. He had shown her his mother's note. A symbol cannot breathe. Yet fear had pushed him into the very shape he hated. I need time, he said. That is what everyone says when they want me to wait quietly while they arrange my life. The old Claire would have softened the sentence after seeing him hurt. She would have apologized for telling the truth too sharply. This time she did not. Nathaniel looked at the guards. Outside. They withdrew. Ethan remained by the open door. Nathaniel faced Claire. If I unlock the gallery, I cannot guarantee your safety. I did not ask for a guarantee. And if you leave the ritual now, Everett may gain control of the council before we expose him. Then he gains it because he built the trap, not because I refuse to live inside it. Nathaniel closed his eyes for one brief second. When he opened them, the king had given way to the man beneath the crown. You are right. He removed the royal key from his belt and placed it on the table before her. The door remains open. The guards follow your instructions, not mine. Claire looked at the key but did not touch it yet. And Megan. Free to leave with you. The workshop. I cannot restore it before the hearing. Then do not promise what you cannot give. He nodded. I will not. The answer should have repaired something. Instead, Claire felt only exhaustion. Trust could not be stitched closed with one correct sentence after a tear this deep. She lifted the veil from the table. It had been altered since she last saw it. A council attendant had sewn a new silver border along the edge, covering the maker's names she had demanded be restored. Claire ran her fingers over the thread. It was unusually stiff, almost metallic. Megan, she said, bring me the scissors. Megan handed them over. Claire cut a small section from the hem. Beneath the decorative border lay a second line of stitching, 3 short loops crossing one long anchor stitch. The same pattern she had seen inside the white ceremonial gown. The same pattern that had hidden the account number. Mrs. Reed leaned closer. That stitch is not used in the workshop. No, Claire said. It belongs to Everett's private ceremonial staff. She turned the veil over. A narrow strip of parchment had been sewn between the layers. Claire opened the seam and removed it. The paper contained a list of payments for omega suppressant medicine, each authorized through the ceremonial office. Her name appeared beside 12 years of shipments. At the bottom was Megan's family debt account, recently purchased by the same office. Everett had funded the medicine that kept Claire's wolf silent, redirected the relief money, and bought the debt used to threaten Megan. The evidence was not hidden in the archive. It had been placed on Claire's own body, waiting to move through the ceremony unnoticed. Nathaniel read the page over her shoulder. His scent filled with cold fury. He planned for you to wear this into the Hall of Vows. Because no one searches a bride, Claire said. And after the third vow, he could remove the veil and destroy the record. Megan looked toward the sealed corridor. Then we have proof. We have one piece. Claire studied the thread. A stain marked the final knot, dark blue wax pressed into the fibers. The ceremonial office used silver wax. Only one department used blue. This was sealed in the council robe room, she said. The senior officers' robes are prepared there before public hearings. Mrs. Reed understood. Everett's robe may contain the original ledgers. Claire nodded. The path into the room would be guarded, but every ceremonial garment required emergency inspection before entering the Hall of Vows. A seamstress could demand access if a robe showed structural damage. Everett had spent years treating workshop women as invisible. That invisibility was now the opening he had failed to close. Claire removed the heavy bridal veil and laid it on the table. Without it, her face felt exposed and free. I am leaving the gallery, she said. Nathaniel did not stop her. What do you need from me? Nothing that requires an order. The answer hurt him, but he accepted it. Then I will follow your lead. Claire shook her head. Not yet. If you arrive with me, Everett will say the king forced the search. She turned to Megan. You know the robe inventory. Every stitch. Mrs. Reed knows the ceremonial access rules. Better than Everett does, the older woman said. Claire looked at Ethan. Can you bring Amelia without alerting the council? Yes. Then she will request an inspection of her family's ceremonial garments. We enter legally, find the original records, and carry them into the Hall of Vows before Everett begins the third vow. Nathaniel stood near the open door, powerful enough to command the palace and finally wise enough not to. And if the records are not there, he asked. Claire held up the silver thread and the blue wax. Then I follow the seam until I find where he hid them. She stepped across the threshold in her plain workshop dress, leaving the veil, the locked gallery, and the temporary crown behind. Everett had pushed her back into the same place she occupied at the beginning, blamed, unpaid, and expected to repair everyone else's disaster. The difference was that Claire no longer believed repair was the price of being kept. This time, she was not fixing the lie for them. She was opening it so the entire kingdom could see who had sewn it. The Hall of Vows was already full when Claire entered without a veil. Nobles filled the silver benches, council clerks lined the walls, and palace workers stood behind the formal guests where they were expected to remain unseen. Everett waited beneath the ceremonial mirror in a black robe edged with silver thread. Nathaniel stood several feet away, dressed for the final vow but wearing no crown. His eyes found Claire immediately. He did not move toward her. He had promised to follow her lead, and this time he meant it. Everett lifted one hand. The temporary bride arrives at last. Claire walked to the center of the hall with Megan, Mrs. Reed, Amelia, and Ethan behind her. She wore her plain gray workshop dress. The needle marks on her fingers were visible. The crescent scar inside her wrist was uncovered. I am not here to finish your ceremony, she said. Everett smiled as though she had given him exactly what he wanted. Then you admit you disrupted the royal succession under false pretenses. No. I am saying no. The word moved through the hall. Claire felt every old fear rise with it. Loss of work. Disappointment. Rejection. This time she let them exist without changing her answer. Everett turned toward Nathaniel. Your Majesty, the law permits you to command completion when a declared bride attempts to abandon a public vow. Nathaniel's golden eyes burned. Then the law is wrong. The council will suspend your authority. Then suspend it. The hall erupted in whispers. Nathaniel looked only at Claire. No crown, council, or ritual will turn her refusal into consent. Everett's confidence faltered for the first time. Claire stepped beside the evidence table. You built this ceremony because you believed both of us would choose fear. You expected me to complete the vow to save the workshop, and you expected him to force me to protect the throne. She placed the strip from the veil on the table. You also believed no one would examine the bride's clothing. Everett's gaze flickered toward the silver thread. Claire saw it. So did Amelia. Before entering this hall, Amelia said, I requested a lawful inspection of my family's ceremonial robes. As a registered participant in the original engagement, that right could not be denied. Mrs. Reed opened a black garment bag. Inside was Everett's second council robe, the one prepared for the post-vow announcement. Claire lifted the lower hem. This border was restitched today. The thread comes from the private ceremonial supply. The needle entered from the inside, which means the seam was closed after the robe was completed. Everett's expression hardened. A repaired hem proves nothing. Correct. Claire took her scissors and opened 3 inches of stitching. A folded packet slid onto the table. The senior archive judge stepped forward before anyone else could touch it. He broke the blue wax seal and unfolded the pages. They were the original relief ledgers from the Southgate riot, the suppressant purchase orders, and the transfer instructions for Megan's family debt. Each document carried Everett's authorization code. The judge's face became grave. Claire pointed to the first ledger. Queen Helena created a fund for civilians who helped during the riot. My name was entered because I helped the Crown Prince escape. She looked at Nathaniel, then back at the court. The money never reached me. It was redirected through the ceremonial office. She held up the medicine orders. For 12 years, the same office paid for omega suppressants sent to my foster home. Those drugs kept my wolf dormant and prevented any natural mate recognition. Murmurs spread through the hall. Everett spoke sharply. The medicine was standard care for an unstable ward. Dr. Samuel Hayes rose from the witness benches. The dosage was not standard. It was prolonged suppression without medical review. The records were concealed under ceremonial expenses. Claire placed the forged payroll beside the original ledger. When I appeared before the vow mirror, Everett used the stolen payments to make it look as if I had been secretly supported by the crown. He created evidence of a relationship he had spent years preventing. Everett turned toward the judges. This is speculation constructed by a seamstress. Then let us discuss the sewing, Claire replied. She held up the false payroll. The signature was traced over graphite. The paper was folded inside fabric before the ink dried, leaving a transfer mark shaped like a 3-point anchoring stitch. That stitch belongs to your private staff. The same pattern concealed the account number in the white bridal gown, the suppressant record in my veil, and the original ledgers in your robe. Megan placed the workshop inventory beside the documents. The silver thread used in every hidden seam was issued only to the Office of Royal Ceremony. Mrs. Reed added the needle register and the puncture spacing matches. The machine in Everett's private alteration room. Amelia stepped forward with 2 letters. He forged my consent to the political marriage as well. My father believed I had agreed. I believed the king had requested it. Neither was true. Everett looked toward Nathaniel. You cannot allow a servant to dismantle succession law based on thread and emotion. Nathaniel descended from the platform. She is not dismantling the law. She is showing where you altered it. Claire unfolded Queen Helena's hidden amendment. The bride for a day ritual requires informed consent. Everett concealed this page because I was never supposed to know the third vow could create a permanent claim. He selected me for the rehearsal because he knew my history, knew I would protect the workshop, and knew I had been trained to fix other people's mistakes by sacrificing myself. The senior judge examined the amendment, then the original seal. The Queen's proposal was lawfully registered but removed from the public code. By whose order? Nathaniel asked. The judge checked the archive mark. Lord Everett Crane. Silence fell. Everett's authority had depended on complexity, hidden records, and the assumption that workers would never understand the systems built above them. Claire had opened every seam. The third vow is invalid, the judge announced. The political engagement is suspended pending review. Lord Everett is removed from ceremonial authority and council access effective immediately. Ethan stepped forward and held out his hand. The seal. Everett did not move. Nathaniel's voice remained calm. Surrender it. After a long moment, Everett removed the silver seal from his robe and placed it in Ethan's palm. The sound was small, but every worker in the hall heard it. Megan's debt contract was declared unlawfully acquired. The workshop closure was cancelled. The stolen relief funds were ordered returned with interest. Amelia was released from the engagement arrangement. The suppressants were placed under medical investigation, and Claire's wolf would recover under her own consent and care. Nathaniel turned to the ceremonial mirror. The wedding is cancelled. No one moved. Take down the flowers, he continued. Return every worker to regular pay. No one will be punished for obeying lawful instructions or refusing unlawful ones. Then he faced Claire. You are free of the ritual. Claire looked at the white veil waiting on its stand. It had hidden names, records, and her own face. She lifted her scissors and cut through the center. The fabric fell apart in 2 clean halves. I will not repair a lie by sewing myself into it, she said. The palace workers began to applaud first. Not the nobles. Not the council. The seamstresses, tailors, cooks, clerks, and apprentices who had watched Claire take blame in silence now watched the entire court listen to her. Nathaniel waited until the sound faded. What do you want now? He asked. Claire looked at the man who had chosen her before understanding how to love without control, and who had now given up the ceremony rather than turn her no into obedience. Not a wedding, she said. His expression held steady, though pain moved through his scent. Understood. She stepped closer. I want a first date. Surprise broke across his face. A real one. No council. No vows. No palace orders. May I choose the restaurant? Claire considered it. You may suggest one. Nathaniel smiled, and for the first time, the entire hall saw the Alpha King wait for an Omega Seamstress to decide what happened next. 3 months later, the Royal Costume Workshop reopened under a new name, Bennett and Turner Atelier. Claire owned half. Megan owned the other half. Every gown carried the names of the people who cut, stitched, embroidered, and finished it, and no worker lost wages because someone with a title made a mistake. Mrs. Reed became director of training. Amelia led the reform council that required informed consent for every royal engagement, bond, and ceremonial vow. Dr. Hayes supervised Claire's recovery after the suppressants were stopped, and her Omega wolf returned slowly, not as a frightened shadow, but as a quiet silver presence she could finally trust. Everett Crane lost his office, his council seat, and all authority over royal ceremonies. The stolen relief funds were restored to the workers and families he had exploited. Nathaniel kept his promise to begin again without a ritual. Their first date took place in a small restaurant near the South Market, where no one bowed until the owner recognized him halfway through dessert. Their second date was less successful because Ethan followed them from 3 tables away and pretended to read the same menu for an hour. By the 10th, Claire no longer wondered whether Nathaniel wanted the woman she had been at 13 or the seamstress who stood before him now. He asked what she wanted, listened when she changed her mind, and never treated her care as something he was owed. When he finally proposed, he did it inside the atelier after closing, with no counsel, no mirror, and no prepared speech. If you say no, he told her, nothing you have built will be taken from you. Claire looked at the man who had once ordered an entire palace to prepare before she understood the choice. Then ask me again. He did. This time, she said yes. Claire designed her own wedding dress with clean silver lines, hidden pockets, and no veil. On the morning of the ceremony, the palace waited in complete silence. No bells rang. No doors opened until Claire placed her hand on the handle herself. Megan stood beside her, smiling. Nathaniel waited at the far end of the Hall of Vows, his golden eyes calm and his hands empty. Claire opened the door, walked forward under her own power, and stopped before him. Ready? He asked. She looked at the workers whose names were sewn inside her gown, at Amelia standing free beside the council, and at the life she had chosen instead of repaired for someone else. Yes, Claire said. Only then did the bells begin.